1981. I walked into the first day of school, 5th grade. You remember the first day? Nervous, excited. There was a new girl in class. She looked at me and said, "Is that a blazer? Is it corduroy? Who wears blazers?" Ugh. I stood there uncomfortably moving in my jacket. I hated that blazer. And all of a sudden, I stood up really straight, and I looked her in the eye, and I smiled, and I said, "Cheryl Ladd wore one last night on Charlie's Angels. That's who wears them." And I walked by her, sat in my seat, and sat down. Confidence was the lesson my ego taught me that day. Then it was December 1983, and I had my first official boyfriend. We had been going together for 4 weeks, and we were madly in love. We were trading notes in class, eating lunch together, going on long walks, and hanging out after school, kissing quite a bit, I have to admit. I was in love, I was hooked. Until that afternoon when the rumors started to fly around in the recess yard that he had asked me to go with him on a dare because I was the chubby girl in class. Couldn't be. I mean, seriously. If it was a dare, why would he have gone with me for 4 whole weeks? That's like a lifetime at that age. I mean, come on now, right? But it didn't matter. After dinner that night, I hopped on my bicycle. I rode to his house. I stood on that porch. I rang the doorbell. He opened the door and looked at me, very happy to see me, but a little surprised. And I said to him, "It's over." He looked sad and he looked shocked, but he never denied it, so I knew it was true. Self-respect is what my ego taught me that day. Then it was June 1989. I stood in front of the podium and I had this conversation with myself. Just say something. They don't care what the decision is, but make the decision and say something. There are 10,000 people sweating in the sun and they're waiting for you to open your mouth. It was my senior graduation, and I was senior class president. So we were ending the ceremony, and these people wanted to get out of here. The big decision was this: whether or not to mention the name of the 4 students that had passed away during our tenure as high school students. See, the debate was this: would it bring sadness to the event, or would we be honoring their memory? For me, it was a big decision because one of the students that had passed away was a very close friend of mine, and he had been brutally murdered during the time. And I couldn't ignore the fact that he was on my mind. And it was also the first time for me as a young adult where I had to make a decision. Would I go with what I felt I needed to do or give in to the demand of the public masses? So I stood at that podium and I made that decision. And I said proudly, "In the memory of Cynthia, Peter, John, and Jeffrey." And the crowd roared and they clapped and they hooted and they hollered. And I was so glad I did it the way I wanted to do it. Courage was the lesson my ego taught me that day. Fast forward, it was September of 2000. I was the can-do-it girl. If anyone can do it, Deanna can do it. I was rounding my 11th year in corporate America, and I had not 1, not 2, but 3 job titles. I was the regional training director, I was the project manager for the division, and I was the sales manager for a rotating staff of upwards of 235 sales reps. And I was tired and I was exhausted. And as I went into the status meeting with my boss that week, by the way, it was held at 6 p.m. on Wednesdays, because she had no life, so why should anybody else? I decided that week would be the week. I was going to admit defeat, which was not easy. But I was going to walk in and say, "Okay, I've got too many competing priorities. You tell me what's number 1. Well, needless to say, I was a little dazed when I walked out 45 minutes with my 4th job title. HR staffing specialist. Did I mention I had no HR experience? I made a decision that day, and I put a plan in place. And 60 days later, I gave notice with all 4 job titles on the letter of resignation. Well, I have to admit I was happy to see that they wanted to keep me. They offered me a promotion with 1 job title, more money, and the opportunity to report directly to the vice president. And I didn't take it. I left. Self-worth was what my ego taught me that day. June 2006. This man is sitting across from me at the conference room table, and he says, "You were not my choice for this position. I do not believe you have the skills or the talents to do this job, and I will not support you. I am waiting for you to fail because once you do, I get to put a person in this position that I believe deserves it, and you are not that person." Whew. I was shocked. I had never had a person say that to me, and I will admit it, I wanted to cry. But my ego wouldn't let me. Now, the other thing my ego wouldn't let me do, my ego would not let me realize that when a person shows up and shows you and tells you who they are, you should listen. Nope. My ego said, "We've got this. We can do this. We are going to change his opinion of us." Now, the funny part is I look back now and think to myself, I don't even know if I really wanted the job that bad. I had a passion for the people and I had a passion for the work. But my ego was most dazzled by the money. My ego said, "Deanna, we're part of the six-figure club. This is great. Come on, we'll do this." And the harder I worked, the worse it got. And when finally one day I got tired enough and I got sick enough, I realized it was enough. And I walked in and I quit. Ignorance was the lesson my ego taught me that day. October 2010, I am sitting in the doctor's office and Dr. Savior sits across from me and says, "You need to realize if you were not as young as you were and as healthy as you were, you would have died from this." I shifted the drain bag that was pinching the left side of my ribs. And I thought to myself, how could this be? It's been 22 months since my weight loss surgery and 22 months since they have not been able to stop this leak in my stomach. I have had 8 drain bags, multiple surgeries. Not one professional has said to me, "You could die. We're not sure if you're going to make it. We don't know what to do." And how is it that I myself have not thought, "I'm dying"? Now I realize it. It's because my ego kept saying, "Don't stop. Keep going. You can do it. No weakness. You're Superwoman." As I sat there in his office, I can still see the colors in his tie and the wallpaper on his walls. And I said to him, "Am I out of the woods or am I still going to die?" He said, "No, I'm going to fix you and you're going to live. Might take us 2 years, but we'll get you there." In my head, I'm thinking, 2 years? Excuse me, I can't do 2 more years. But I did. And that day I looked at him and said, "Okay, where do we start?" Trust is what my ego taught me that day. February 2012, I am sitting amongst the moving boxes on the couch. Moving day sucks. Sorry. Does it not? But that moving day was really bad. It was the last phase in the 44-month struggle that my husband and I had been through to see whether I would live or not. Happy news is I'm here, so that's the good news. However, we went through a lot. And although the insurance company covered the $3 million claim, it did not cover the 6-figure income that I lost for 4 years. So we lost everything that we had built in 2 decades of marriage. The homes, the cars, the retirement, the savings. We filed bankruptcy. But the worst thing I lost was my identity. I couldn't remember who I was and what I was good at. I associated myself as a professional, as an earner, as a business person. I couldn't imagine even getting a job at 7-Eleven. And as I sat on that couch and I shared with my husband my fears through my tears, this wonderful man looked at me and said, "Sweetheart, go out and do what you are meant to do. What you have put on this earth, your calling, because you can, not because you have to go earn the money." Potter Coaching and Consulting was born. Humility is what my ego taught me that day. March 2015, I am sitting in a room. I am reading the last words aloud from the book. I set it on my lap, and the room applauds. I am sitting at my very own book launch party. Woo! From Distress to Success was the name of the book. I told my story, I shared my lessons because I believed I could help others. I had come full circle that day. Now, I wasn't a fool. I knew that I had a lot more to go through for my husband and I, for me as a woman, and my business. But that day, I saw beyond the fear and I saw beyond the pain for the first time in a long time. Hope was what my ego taught me that day. October 21st, 2015, I stand on a stage at a historical event. I feel nervous and I feel excited. In front of an audience that I wonder, what will they think? Will they cry? Will they laugh? Will they relate to me? Will I make an impact? Will I make a difference? Will I be remembered? Will I be a successful, unstoppable, empowering woman on that day? And then I realized to myself, my ego will continue to teach me lessons throughout my entire life, as long as I'm willing to listen.